prepare yourselves for a new podcast featuring the entertaining stylings of Link 584 and Foisco. This is the podcast.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the third season of the podcast. I am Foisco,
And I'm Link 584.
and today we want to talk to you about...
Oh, you're leaving it to me?
Yeah.
Why don't we say it at the same time?
Really? Okay.
Okay.
I don't even know what the
I
title
don't
is.
know. This is season 3, everybody. Alright. Good night, everybody.
Okay, so tonight,
Oh, well, what if they're watching in the morning?
today, tomorrow, yesterday,
Okay,
whatever.
whenever it is you're watching it, whatever time zone, the topic at hand that we'd like to start season 3 with is, in case you didn't know, this is season 3.
Yes, I
can't believe-
announced at the beginning of the video that this was season 3.
Can you believe it's 3 years? This is the 3rd year.
Yes.
That's incredible. This is one of our oldest shows, one of our original ones. So, now, celebration aside, because that is fantastic. 3 seasons, everybody.
Okay,
Right,
okay,
right.
but seriously,
But so just
today's topic...
is similar to podcast's future.
Okay.
Will
Yes.
Yes.
Our games from, our childhood, Mario, Ocarina of Time,
I think what you're meaning to say is
are
are the games that are being created today going to be as classic and as remembered as the old ones, right?
this is horrible. I hate it.
All right, let's start over.
Hey there, guys, and welcome to the third season of the podcast. I'm Foisco,
I'm Link 584.
and today we're going to talk about are today's games holding up to yesterday's games, shall we say?
Right, like the games they grew up with that we grew up with within the 90s, the late 80s, so on, the classics, as a lot of people refer to them, the NES and SNES Genesis era.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those games are still actively played on a regular basis today via, either having your old console in or having them available on things such as the Virtual Console on a Nintendo Wii or the Xbox Arcade. I mean, they are actively put up there and said, hey, these are old games, and you guys love them, and they're still being played today.
Yeah, a lot of them are given HD remakes for a reason, obviously, because they're classics. They have a lot of replay value. But is a tomorrow game going to be as replayable as those old classics are?
Right, and a lot of them fall into today's. Like, actually, before we started this, you were mentioning, for example, GTA 4 was a game that you absolutely loved.
Yes,
when it
with
came
Nico
out.
Bellic, yes.
Right, and you brought up a point of, are you going to play that again? Which brings up an issue of replayability, which we talked about a replayability factor in another podcast, but this is not going to be the same. It's different, because there's replayability in the moment, like once you beat something, you want to do it again, like Resident Evil 4 or what have you, but this is different. You're
right.
saying...
Am I going to pick up this game and say, I want to start a new story, I want to go back and start out the new adventure? No. GTA 4 is never a game that I'm going to go back to. I will keep it, I will play it with friends online, we'll screw around in multiplayer, but am I ever going to go redo that story? Relive that adventure? No.
Right, and so... basically, you'll do the whole screwing around things, which makes me think of, sort of on topic, off topic, is like the Call of Duty series.
Right.
You have a lot of these multiplayer games. We're not really going to talk about those, because those are obviously, for the most part, by most people, meant to be discarded once, like, the new thing comes out. We're talking about things like with story and, GTA 4, a lot of people screw around online and what have you, but when you buy it, you really buy it for, like, a 25-plus hour experience with DLC and the works.
Shoot up people getting headshots and stealing cabs from taxi drivers and, you know.
But not even just that, but like other games, like Final Fantasies and so on. Like the games that really revolve, that really, you sit down and you play it by yourself. That's really what we're going to be talking about today.
You want to relive the story. And there's a lot of games out there today that just have no call to relive them. That once the adventure is done, what's the appeal?
Like you don't feel a certain calling to it, but then on other ones you sometimes do, like a Legend of Zelda game. You'll say, "Oh, Ocarina of Time, I love that game," and you say, "Okay, I'll play that again," because it's a happy medium of both the gameplay and that you just enjoy it enough. But then there's some games that just when you play them, for whatever reason, there's no feel to go back to them, even though you enjoyed it. And I think that's probably part of what we're going to have to understand by the end of this, to really see why some games aren't going to be necessarily like the classics, like the original Super Mario Bros. And, Super Mario World and Ocarina of Time. What makes them so different if we enjoy them? Like, what you enjoyed GTA 4?
Yes,
a lot,
I did. I loved it.
but it seems like now you just wait for the next one in line.
Yeah, kind of. I will give it this, though. San Andreas was the first GTA game that I had ever played, and on occasion I will go back and play that one, but not as extensively as I played the first one. So that one is a little bit... It's kind of a gray area. But, like, I just recently bought the new GTA 5, who didn't? And I have yet to beat it, so I will, eventually go back and beat it. But I will never go back and restart the story again. I feel like that's, it was a great game, it was a great adventure, but it just doesn't hold up over time, I feel like.
Yeah, like you don't necessarily want to redo the work, sort of.
Right.
Like it's weird. There are some games, like for example, Final Fantasy X is a game that I really absolutely loved. I introduced you to it.
Yes, you did.
A couple of years ago or so, and basically, I have played the game, and I did this when it first came out, and then with Foisco here, I introduced it to her years later after I played it, and it was years. I had no initial urge to replay it, right? But to me, it was amazing. It was great, and I was excited to know that one day I'm going to want to relive that magic all over again. So then I shared it with her together. Now they're coming out with the whole HD remastered or whatever the heck it is, which isn't a significant change. I mean, we already know everything that there's going to be in it, but it's been a couple of years since we've played it. And we kind of get that urge, like an old movie that you might really enjoy, just to watch it a few times in your life. You say, I'm going to redo it. There's some that hold up, and you say, all right, that's a classic game, and you'll just enjoy the story and all that all over again. But for me, taking the Assassin's Creed storyline, for example, I never want to go back and replay any of the Assassin's Creeds. Like, I like that I had the experience and the journey, but I don't want to redo all of that work that I did to it.
So that's kind of an interesting point. Reward versus... reward versus work. Is the reward great enough to go back and do the work all over again? And I will say about Final Fantasy X, that is one of my probably top 10 favorite games. And as beautiful and as magical as it was, that's not a game that I'm going to want to replay every year. And it's not because I just didn't enjoy it enough, because, I mean, clearly top 10 favorites. It's just that I don't feel as though the reward is comparable to the amount of work that and time and effort that I have to put in to relive this experience.
Kind of drains you after so many hours.
It does. It does.
It's easier on some of the older games because they're quicker. Like, you see, they're more consumable, like a bag of chips. You're able to keep plowing through. You're like, yeah, I'll have more. I'll do that again. But then something like this, it's like having a big
bag of
meal
chips versus like
like
a party
feast.
bowl.
Yeah. And it's like you had this big, wonderful thing, this huge 40-plus hour experience. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of hours. It's really draining on you, like, in a good way. It sounds like a bad thing, but when you've just done it, you don't want to do it right away. But then there are some that I think, like I compared with Assassin's Creed, it's like, well, I think everyone's always going to remember Assassin's Creed, but no one's going to be going back and playing it.
Actually,
but part of that, too, why I want to make a note of is that's multiple games that are very long, that are very draining, just like playing a Final Fantasy game. But they have multiple games that equal one story that goes in order. It's like, you have a series of movies, and if you watch them out of order, it doesn't do any good. So it's like, all right, I played, 4, 5, 6 Assassin's Creed games. Why would I want to go back and play the third one? I'd want to redo it from the very beginning. And it just seems like too much work to get to that third one. Because it's just, it's not a trilogy, but you know what I mean. It has all these games in succession. And to get back to that point is work.
I think if I were to replay an Assassin's Creed game, it would be the first one with Altair. And I'm sure that I'm probably like the only person on the planet, but I really enjoyed that one.
Like, I think everyone enjoyed it when it came out, but then they knew that it could do better, and once the second one came out, it blew it out of this world. So it's like I don't want to lose the mechanics from, I don't want to play the first one again, because from the second game onward, they all share the same mechanics roughly that were greatly improved upon from the first one. It's like I don't want to be stripped of everything that I knew either. It's like when I play a new one, you're starting from scratch. Your character has to rebuild. But it's like every game you have to rebuild because of your character, and you have to start from scratch. And then each game has different mechanics, and some of them are improved upon. It's like, all right, if I want to go back, and let's say I'm on Assassin's Creed 6 or something, then I go back to the second one, it's like you've lost so many different mechanics because it just feels like you're playing the same game but improved, depending on what one you're playing. But then now they've recently they started changing things up. But it's like, for whatever reason, I don't think I'd ever go back and play like Assassin's Creed 3, for example. I mean, well, 2.5 rather. I keep saying 3, but we all know that they don't follow, you have 2 and then 2.5 and 2.9. You have all these weird ones for Assassin's Creed 2. Like, it just seems so ick to me. Like, I don't want so to me it was a great experience, but I'm never gonna relive it again. I know within myself I'm not gonna go back to that.
See, I'd want to go back and replay the first one. Little weird fact about me, I prefer riding horses in the first one compared to all the other ones. Like, they improved so much. And are you laughing, coughing at me?
Golf.
Oh. So anyways, I feel as though the horse mechanics riding was better in the first one, and in the later games I'm sorry.
I'm dying on the set of the podcast. Welcome to season 3, everybody.
Oh my goodness.
Some air just went the wrong way. I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't mean to die on you.
I don't even remember what I was saying.
We're talking about the horses, but the thing is Assassin's Creed aside, though, like you were saying, you would go back and play the first one again. But did you ever think that there's a reason why the first one versus all the others too? Like I said, if there's 7 Assassin's Creed games, and I want to go back and play what was the third one or fourth one in,
environment.
I feel like I have to work my way back up to that in order to truly enjoy it. I want the story to be in order. It's kind of like watching a TV show. Like, for example, if I went a long period of time without watching a TV show, and then you said, okay, so there's, let's say, 8 seasons of a show out, and I wanted to go back and redo it, I would start from the beginning. It's like, for example, I really love the show Boy Meets World, and I think the best seasons of that show are from seasons 4 to 7. Like, not to say I don't like the first 3, but the real good ones are 4 and onward. But
you'd never just go watch 4 and up.
Exactly. And so that's the thing, is that so at least I'd enjoy it along the way. Well, when doing the other Assassin's Creed, since I know what I'm getting to and blah, 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 it's like, if I wanted to go and jump into number 4, I have to do the others first. And it's like, all right, there is too many hours to put into the game, because if I blaze through it, it's not going to be fun. If I take too long to do it, I feel like, all right, I just did a bunch of hard work. Now I need a break before I do the next Assassin's Creed, because I did so much work, and now I'm just going to do more of similar things again. So I think what I'm going to say is a franchise that has games that are in order, such as that, I think that as far as being held up over time, I think the quality is probably still held up, but the problem is you won't personally go back and play it to support said quality because there's too much work involved.
I think we're a little off topic.
No, I think it's right on topic, because it's a mix of replayability, but then also, are they going to be as remembered as the classics? And I think that's part of the reason why yes and no, depending on who you are, they won't be. Like, for me, I'll always remember the Assassin's Creed series, but it's
a good one.
But I think it's not being, it's gonna hold up, but it's not gonna be held up as a remembered classic. I just remember that people are gonna look back and say, yeah, the Assassin's Creed franchise, that's a good franchise. But you're not going to remember the individual games of said franchise because they all kind of blur together. The characters a little bit blur together. And if you want to enjoy one out of order, it's just too, you kind of, or at least I can't do that. So to me, I look at it as a whole franchise that it might be held up, but I'm not going to hold up an individual game. Like, I look at the Legend of Zelda franchise, and I think the entire franchise will always be held up because it still is. It's still going. So that clearly is one that is lasting. But you can look at individual Zelda games and say, yes, this is held up, or yes, this is a classic. Same thing with old Mario ones. You can pick up and play and you say, yes, that's good. Yes, that's a classic.
Paper Mario.
Exactly. And you don't need to play any, you can play them in any order whenever. And so I think that the easier it is to pick up and play a game, and the shorter a game is more likely to become a classic.
Ooh, okay.
I think like that's what I'm trying to get at. Is, for example, in all that huge mess of everything, that's why the Assassin's Creed won't have individual games that would be held up as classics in 20 years from now, but the franchise itself will be held as such.
Example, I guess I want to bring this up. Fallout 3 for me I believe is always a replayable. And some of you are like, oh my god, that's such a huge game, what the hell's wrong with you? But there are so many different choices you can make, there's so many different paths you can take, there's so many different places to explore.
I think a lot of people agree with you.
I hope so, because,
Because it is so huge. The people who put hundreds of hours.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I had 400 hours by the
so
time I was done.
So just to get that, I think you have a huge backing behind you.
I hope so. But, there's so many different choices, but then I played, what's it called?
Mass Effect?
No.
Skyrim.
No.
Oblivion.
Shush!
Hey!
Fallout New Vegas. That one to me does not feel as though it is a replayable one, and I wonder if that's just because of my personal opinion, that maybe it just wasn't as well done as Fallout 3, or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
It's weird because Fallout New Vegas was the better of the two games according to the masses. I personally...
See, really? I thought it was the black sheep of all of them. I personally preferred Fallout 3.
The black sheeps would be the ones that most people aren't familiar with, which are the original 2D ones. 1 through 1 and 2.
See,
and so on and so forth. Those ones we never played. But those aren't black sheep. Fallout New Vegas, most people will agree that that's the better one because they fine-tune certain mechanics that just made it overall better. For me, I can't speak on that behalf because my time with it is limited. In fact, I don't think I actually played New Vegas more than maybe an hour.
Now I want to play New Vegas.
But for example, you were saying about between the two, one of them is going to go down as a classic for you and the other won't, or...
I think so. I feel like I enjoyed Fallout 3 more. It was the first one I'd ever played, and I don't think that had anything to do with it. I just think it was better. I don't know. I prefer it better. But when it comes to the Oblivion series, or the Elder Scrolls series, excuse me, I prefer Skyrim over Oblivion.
Yeah, because Skyrim's an improvement on it.
Right, but then why wouldn't I like the improvement? I mean, I guess there were certain things I didn't like about the new one. I think
part of it too was Fallout New Vegas was shortly after Fallout 3, while Skyrim was 8 years after.
Well, but not for me, because
You did, well, it was a huge jump from Oblivion in all sorts of technology. You would notice it, Fallout New Vegas would be smaller because they were closer together. You see, it went Oblivion, then it went Fallout 3, then it went Fallout New Vegas, then it went Skyrim. So even if you played Oblivion and Skyrim side by side, there was 10 years of actual improvements done technology-wise that you would notice it. It's going from an N64 to an Xbox 360.
I guess that makes sense. That makes sense.
But that aside, the replayability, though, is affecting how you think you'll view Fallout 3 in years to come. But you also equally just said something about Skyrim is better than Oblivion, and you put so many hours into Oblivion. It's here's my thing. I put so many hours back in the day into Oblivion, and I'm always going to remember it, and it's going to be a classic in my mind. But as a whole, everyone seems to yeah, Oblivion. But now that Skyrim is the updated version of Oblivion. So Skyrim essentially is replacing Oblivion in a lot of ways, kind of like how every year a new Call of Duty comes out, that Call of Duty replaces the next one. People aren't going back and playing the old ones, on the mass scale. People are playing Mario and certain Zelda games.
Who buys Call of Duty for the story?
But you get the point is that Skyrim, despite it being 8 years later, is replacing Oblivion. So it makes me wonder, like, okay, so the Elder Scrolls series, that's always going to be viewed as classic, but Oblivion itself might not be viewed as that because now it's even though it's 8 years later, it's having the same effect that having a new Call of Duty is every year is, even though Skyrim came out 8 years later. It's taking the place. And then once the new Fallout and the new Skyrim comes out, they'll bury these ones. And so even though you can put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into a game, and the replayability is so high and so great, and you might actually experience it more and more than you would of any other of these other classic games that are living on, they essentially could die because we're getting an updated version of it. It's kind of like Ocarina of Time is starting to finally show its age, and then they came out with an HD redone version.
But see, if what you say makes sense, but then why would I enjoy Fallout 3 more than I enjoy New Vegas if New Vegas is the one that's supposed to take over Fallout 3?
Because I said Fallout 4 and not Fallout New Vegas. And like I said, Fallout New Vegas, like I said, there wasn't a jump. That was like that was like an instant Call of Duty effect. Like, let's say, like, I don't know how many years apart it was. I think it was 2. But think of it like
Fallout 4.
But think of it this way: is the new one came out, right? But in the end, you look at Call of Duty, little things are made here and there, and you say, okay, if one new one is done every year, you say, what really has been improved? It would be little, right? Mm-hmm. Fallout New Vegas came out only a couple years after Fallout 3, so what really was improved? I can't speak for it, but the point that I'm trying to make is that it was small, so even if it's the better one, it doesn't actually matter in this case, because it's not like the jump that I was trying to say with Oblivion to Skyrim. There was a huge jump between the two. And so once the new ones come out, once Fallout 4 and Oblivion 3, come out, blah, blah, whatever, okay. And then Fallout 5, and then Fallout 6, and Fallout 7. Point is, even though there's years in between them, whether it's 2 years or an 8-year gap like the Oblivion series, the point is, you're getting essentially a redone version of the same game in a new environment. Like, all you're really getting is you're like, oh, I really want to experience this, but improved. It's kind of like when a new Animal Crossing comes out or something along those lines. You know what you're getting into, but you want those improvements. And when you get those improvements, you also want to have new people, new NPCs, new, landscapes. You don't just want the improvements. You want the new improvements, but in a new world while retaining a similar feel. And so it makes me think that what we see now is these great and almighty games. And, like Fallout 3 has been out for like 6 years now or whatever. We're like, alright, it's clearly holding up well. But, just like Skyrim did to Oblivion, point is, as we get down the line, they're going to be buried under, kind of like every year a new Call of Duty gets buried. So it has a similar effect. While something like the Legend of Zelda franchise does something different with every single game. They're making improvements, but each one is artistically different. Each one has different style of music. Each one has blah, blah, blah. That keep them all separable. And you could say, this Zelda game isn't getting buried by another Zelda game. Because it's more of the same, but it's not more of the same. Because of the little things that Nintendo does.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to get out, is that your Fallout game in 20 years from now might not be a classic anymore, as we get 3 more Fallouts in between now and then.
Okay, so what about the games of tomorrow? Do you predict that they will hold up that same replayability, or do you think that they will slowly fade, or they just won't be as good as the classics? Are the classics going to stay the classics because they're classics to us for a reason, because we grew up with those were our childhood, our prime?
I really think that's what it comes down to, is what pretty much on the same line of what I just said, is Nintendo is keeping the Legend of Zelda franchise, each one being separate from art styles and so on and so forth. I think what needs to happen is you could have a game like Fallout become a classic 20 years from now, but what it needs to do is just like Nintendo is doing, is there needs to be something that keeps the replacement, quote unquote, ones different from that, so that way they can all have their own life. Like Ocarina of Time is different from Majora's Mask, as Majora's Mask is different from Zelda 2, while Zelda 2 is different from A Link Between Worlds, as A Link Between Worlds is different from the Minish Cap.
Well, right, but I mean,
that's what they need, is right now, Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas they're on their way to becoming classics, just like Oblivion was. But then once you get the HD new version of it, those experiences and all that stuff, we still had them, but the memories begin to kind of get overlapped with the new ones. They get overwritten with the new HD experiences and the new improvements. So I think something does have the ability to, and I think the reason why there's more classics at an original age of video games is because they all were new. They were the first of their kinds. So there was more opportunity because there was nothing to ever be overwritten and competed with. And they were also simpler. So I think that certain indie games, if recognized by the masses, will probably become classics. But I think there's going to be less classics produced, but there will be classics produced. We just got to observe and see what they truly are. And I think what we're going to have is more classic franchises than we do classic individual games. That's my prediction. Like Mass Effect. I think that's going to become a classic franchise. But in 20 years from now, as they make better improvements, they're going to be overwritten by new HD enhancements, new choices, new virtual worlds, and all that stuff. So I think it's going to be franchises as a whole and not individual games.
Okay. I can appreciate that answer. My personal opinion is that I believe that the games will get better and better and better as time moves on. They'll become more advanced, they'll become more interesting. Stories will always be getting better and more complex. However, I do not think they will hold the same replayability as some of the games when I was a child. And that may be because I was a child and games were simpler when I played them back then. But games like BioShock, for example, and Mass Effect, and Skyrim, and Fallout, and all those good ones, they're amazing games, but they're too complex to relive that adventure and feel the same way you did when you were a child. I think there's a reason that they're classics, and not because of the way they're made, but because how we perceived them during that time of our lives.
So what do you think people, like, if we have a son or daughter or something, that then they'll grow up and then they'll...
I believe that they will have different classics than you and I will.
Like, I think...
I mean, of course, if we have a son or daughter, the first freaking game they're playing is Ocarina of Time, but...
Right, we're going to make them play the classics, but I mean, like, if so, the child born today and they're playing them, whatever is new within their era might become classics to them as something was classics to us, kind of like our parents like a certain type of music and we like a different type. Like, what we like, we're going to be like, yeah, these are the music of our generation. These are the games of our generation.
Yeah, these are the movies of our generation. I just believe that there was a way that we felt when we were children, when we were playing this, and when we had more imagination back then. And so we felt certain ways when playing these games, and, because we felt what we felt while we were playing them, I think that is what makes them, that's what makes them great.
Right.
Because I remember exactly what I was doing when I first played Ocarina of Time. I remember that my mother would always take us to like a movie store rental place, and on the weekend she would always rent me a game so that I could play, and I always got the same game because I never had a chance to beat it. And of course, because it was a rental, there was never the same file, so I had to relive the same few dungeons over and over again. But playing the game and imagining, that could be me instead of Link, you have that imagination and wonder as a child.
Right.
That you lose as you get older. But when I sit down and I am playing and I'm riding Epona across Hyrule Field, I feel like I'm a child again, and I'm viewing this world in a sense of wonder. And
like the nostalgia glasses that people talk about,
exactly.
that really does influence maybe what, like, but at the same time, if you look at the music industry, music has been around for many generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are set classics from every era. Like, some eras have more, but it's like, clearly they're different because they're based upon what that current generation is. But there are certain ones that are pulled as classics. And so I think Mass Effect will become one of those, but at the same time, Like, that's my biggest thing, is it's not just going to be that you're born into an era and certain ones are the largest ones at the time. And, you know, just like movies as well. Like, I really think that it's going to be where video games are a form of media. I think it's going to be a matter of, are these certain things going to overlap and erase what could be a classic like Skyrim was to Oblivion? And I think that's going to be that's the only thing that's so questionable to me, is as the technology keeps getting better and better, will it erase what could have been, you know? Like, that's my thing, the whole Skyrim taking over Oblivion, and Oblivion was on its way to be a classic, and then, you know, and then like it took like StarCraft 2 to StarCraft. You know, StarCraft, huge, and then it took 10 years before they announced StarCraft 2. I mean, makes me wonder, you know.
I guess it's just all up to interpretation.
I guess we'll just have to podcast about it again in like 30, 40 years from now. I mean, we'll have to wait for a couple generations to go by. So pretty much when we're like in our 60s and 70s, we're going to have to look back and
with
say...
our children, you know, and grandchildren.
Yeah, they'll be playing Fallout, you know, number 10. And then, you know, of course, we'll be on like Final Fantasy number 39. And so we'll have to look back.
Really? 39?
Yeah. And I think that's just like the Final Fantasy series just does like Zelda. Each one is different. I think that they have more of an opportunity to become classics. Each Final Fantasy on its own does, because they're different. But that's why I'm worried about the franchises like Fallout and Oblivion and Assassin's Creed that kind of overwrite it. Assassin's Creed's different because it's a storyline. But Oblivion and Skyrim don't relate. One overlaps the other. You know, it's an HD new version, like I was saying. It erases it from what could have been classic history. And then once the new one comes out, then that would erase that, and that would erase that. And so that's why I think having the Final Fantasies, they all share similar elements, but they're all completely different, like Zelda does. And I think that's what's going to keep certain classics as individual games alive versus what I said about franchises.
Okay, so we are going to have to set an alarm for, you know, about 30 or 40 years, and we're going to have to...
I don't think you'll have the same phone.
We're going to figure out some way to do this, like some...
I remember the iPhone. I used to have one back in my day. Now I'm on the Z phone. Because that's... I'll have the same SIM card for all the history. Okay, you set the alarm, and Grandpa Link is
going in the doghouse for interrupting me.
is gonna take his Z phone and go to bed.
Yeah, we'll have to, you know, listen to this podcast and redo it in a few years or so.
We should do this like every 10 years if we actually redo it and see how our opinion has changed. In 10 years, that's a long time from now. But like, is Fallout on its way to becoming...
But we'll have to listen to it after we've redone it.
Exactly. Do the podcast and listen to it every 10 years. You know, do it, listen. Because like, there are certain games that now are becoming like 8 years old, and then by then would be 18 years old, and then we could critique them. Like Luigi's Mansion. You know, it came out in 2002.
Anyways, I think that's about it for this podcast.
Yeah, I concur. It was very unorthodox as always.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's why I like these. They get messy, and out of that mess, we do take away something, and we're usually unsure of what we took away, but we know we took away something.
Yeah, I always end up leaving podcasts feeling like, wow, that sucked. And then like, oh yeah, okay, it wasn't that bad, listening back to it later.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, nope, it sucked. And then like a couple weeks later, oh, we've got a great comment, like everybody loved it. I'm like, really? I thought it sucked.
Yeah, from you mostly have like one little moment after a while. You're like, yep, that's good. And the rest of the time, it's just awful. There's no winning with you.
I'm a woman. There's no winning with me ever.
Anyway,
no, but really.
So I guess that's it for the first episode of season 3 of the podcast.
So welcome back, and look forward to other episodes coming soon.
Definitely, and by coming soon, you mean
once a month.
Once a month. So soon is relative.
Come back during that time of the podcast month.
Exactly. So I'm Link584,
And I was Foisco.
and thank you for watching,
Listening.
listening. If you watched it during the whole thing, you are incredible, because you probably have really sore eyes now, and that makes you incredible.
Yeah, what'd you look at?
Uh,
You're listening to podcasts with Link and Foisco?
Yeah, the podcast logo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that really doesn't make you amazing. It just makes you really, really...
Bizarre.
Yeah, because now you have sore eyes.
And you just could have wasted, I don't know, however long this was doing other stuff.
Yeah, and if you didn't blink during this episode, go see a doctor. Bye, guys.
Bye!
Bye.
Achoo!
Bless you.